A lot of guys like to think that flipping is just a late in the day deal, and it's obviously can be really good then, but I've had it happen to me too many times where I may not get the numbers of bites in the morning, but oftentimes I can catch a big one. There's definitely a feeding window in these grass mats for whatever reason, right when that sun comes out, the first few hours. And I feel like usually you have 3 windows in a day. You've got the early morning, whether you make it happen or not. Then you have that midday surge where I feel like a lot of the bigger fish are caught. When the sun's out, it's burning hot. That's usually your next big opportunity in a grass bed is midday. And then you have later in the evening. You know, so here on Guntersville, the grass changes every year, and every year it's a little bit different. And there's a lot of milfoil this year in a lot of the bays and a lot of the creeks. And anytime you can find that where it's reached the surface or even subsurface on that submerged edge, you know, there's typically going to be fish around that stuff. Really, I'm just looking for the thickest stuff that I can basically get my bait into. The more that grass grows, the thickest stuff visually from the top looking down is the biggest canopies if you're actually in the water looking up, because the grass grows up in a stalk and then it basically rolls over. So from the top looking down, you're thinking there's no way a fish can be in that, but in reality, those are the biggest voids, is the thickest, nastiest stuff that you can get your bait in. If you look at just say a big oak tree from the top down, you would think there's no way anything's going to be in there. But whenever you get under the tree and you look up, that's exactly where you're going to want to hang out. That's a good one. Oh. It felt big. Get all that grass in there. First grass bass of the day. I mean, you can just tell we're kind of going down this edge, and it was in a little, I say a clump, just a place that's a little bit more of a canopy than the rest of the stuff around, and that's where they like to be. That one hit it like it was 5 pounds. One thing I really try to keep in mind when you're doing this, especially in a tournament, is just trying to stay in a good position to not only set the hook to make sure that, but also to make sure that you're set up proper on that fish when you do get a bite. Because if it's a real aggressive bite, a lot of times if you're not in a good position, you'll actually pull the bait out of the fish's mouth when they bite it. Because sometimes they'll come across that mat, they'll be in that canopy and come running across and hit it on a dead run. And if you're like this, pointed at them, and they take off and run with it, you'll never get a good hook set. And I don't think that a lot of times the fish have the bait fully in their mouth at that point. So I try to keep myself in this kind of position. That way when one bites it, a lot of times I'm gonna do this and let him pull me down and then start to pull. So this right here is the Yamamoto Flap and Hog large version. You know, basically I was catching them on a 1 ounce weight, 40-pound vicious braid, a 5/0 Trocar Monster flipping hook, TK135. This is a green pumpkin, like it's a dark green pumpkin, green and purple flake. I actually take a pair of scissors and cut the 2 appendages off on the upper part of the body on the sides of it. That just allows me to get in and out of the mats a little bit cleaner. So I want to make sure that I'm using a bait that I can get a hook in them and that I can be efficient with in and out of the cover. One good way to tell that I'm hitting the right mats, or if a mat is actually good, is whenever I'm watching my bait fall with this 1 ounce weight, I'm basically feeling it on the way down. I don't really want it hitting any stems. If you look at it like a house, I don't want it around the posts of the building, around the edges. I want it to fall right through the roof. There we go. Good one. And that was a perfect example. I'm dropping it right in the house. But yeah, look at that thing. That's a good Guntersville bass right there. They don't grow like that everywhere in June. They're super healthy. Yamamoto Flap and Hog, a lot of grass. I don't know, probably three something. Not the longest fish, but overall for punching and flipping in heavy cover, I used to think you wanted to use a super stiff rod to yank those fish out of there, and that is not the case. I want something that's soft as I can get away with, that's parabolic, that bends almost all the way to the handle on a big fish. But when you take an 8-foot rod, it creates a lot of power whenever you lean into those fish. You don't need something super stout. You want something that will penetrate the hook, not break the line, and then, you know, winch that fish out of that heavy cover to the boat and keep a load on those fish. I've been using my new prototype rod that I'm coming out with a favorite. It's a 711 heavy, super soft tip, moderate action, but this rod has a lot of power. And I've spent a lot of time working with them on this rod. This morning I was using the latest version of the prototype. We're gonna have them decorated up in a little bit of orange and black for you guys. But like I said, it's a really moderate action, basically meaning softer than a normal broomstick rod. Just a, you know, long taper in the rod. Whenever you load up on a fish, the whole rod bows and gives to that fish, and you get all the benefits out of that I didn't know for many years that I wish I did. Well, sometimes when you get up on the insides of this stuff, you can sit in one place and fish a lot of stuff without ever having to touch the trolling motor, and that's what we're doing here. You can spend a lot of time doing this just because there is so much stuff up on these insides of these grass beds. But like I said, if you hunt and peck around enough and you find these groups of fish that a lot of people don't go hunting for because it's not the easiest thing to do, you can usually find some stuff off to yourself. So I usually don't start out fishing this way, up in the middle of stuff, but once I kind of get a few things going and I know there's fish around, I'll definitely get up on the insides of stuff and see what I can find. If I'm less than 7 or 8 foot, I usually let it go to the bottom, at least initially. And I would say 75% of the time, you're going to get bit on that initial fall within the first 2 pops. I really don't prefer the bottom as much as I do the top, but it can be either or. But most of the time, it's whenever it falls through. And a lot of times I feel like when you hop one off the bottom and they went down on it and you hopped it in their face, usually is what my experience has told me. I don't think they necessarily sit on the bottom, but that doesn't mean that they won't bite it off the bottom. When I'm in, you know, some of that deeper grass, I'm not letting it go all the way to the bottom in that deeper water because I feel like those are times when they're definitely going to stay higher. There we go. The keeper anyway. So yeah, we're up on this inside band a little bit here. You notice the water's super clean. There's some isolated clumps up in here. Just a decent Guntersville keeper bass, but there's just so much of this stuff you can fish. Like I said, the outside edge, the fringe, you can take a 1/2 ounce weight. You get down the main edge line, you can get up on the inside, and there's fish really in all 3 places. It's just a matter of where, and like I talked about again and again, timing. So that's our 4th bite of the morning. I'd say that's pretty good, considering considering it is the morning, and we'll see if we can't catch a few more. I was trying not to set the hook towards the cameraman. Little guy. It's probably a keeper. You would think that this time of day, the higher the sun gets, the better, but from my experience, a lot of times, once that morning starts to burn off a little bit and that sun starts to get up, you'll have a little window there, but it starts to taper. That doesn't mean you quit doing it, but just understanding that the windows of opportunity start to close once the morning starts to burn away. So a lot of guys, they think of grass fishing and, you know, fishing mats or heavy cover and things like that. They think of it as a high sun, late in the day to catch a kicker kind of thing. And I've just learned over the years that so many times the fish are biting in the morning. You know, the first few hours of light, they're chewing. And that's when a lot of my bigger bites come from, in the nastiest, thickest cover. I don't get a lot of bites in the morning, but they will absolutely bite first thing in the morning, and your chances of catching a good one is pretty good.